My name is Sophia, and the day I found the hotel receipt in Blake's jacket was the day I stopped being the fool and became the architect of his shame. We'd been together for 3 years, engaged for 6 months, planning a wedding that would never happen. Blake was a fitness influencer with 200,000 followers, obsessed with his image, his body, his perceived perfection. I was a writer, quiet and reserved, always in his shadow. People wondered what he saw in me. "You're so lucky," they'd say. I believed them. That Tuesday afternoon, I found the receipt while doing laundry. Room service for 2, champagne, strawberries, cliched and devastating. My hands shook as I checked the date. Last weekend, when he'd claimed he was at a training seminar. I sat on our bed, staring at that piece of paper, and something cold settled in my chest. Not heartbreak, though that would come later. Something harder. Strategic. Blake thought I was simple, trusting, grateful for his attention. He was about to learn how wrong he was. I didn't confront Blake immediately. Instead, I watched. Really watched. How he'd smile at his phone and hide the screen when I walked by. How he'd started going to the gym at odd hours. How he'd become critical of everything I did. "You're letting yourself go, Sophia," he'd say, even though I hadn't changed. He was building a narrative, justifying whatever he was doing. The next morning, I checked his laptop while he was in the shower. His email was still logged in, careless of him. There were dozens of messages to someone named Clarissa. The words made me sick, intimate details, plans to meet, discussions about me. "She's so boring," Blake had written. "She doesn't understand my lifestyle. You get me." Clarissa responded with heart emojis and agreements. They'd been seeing each other for 4 months. 4 months of lies. I took screenshots of everything, backing them up to a cloud account Blake didn't know existed. Then I closed the laptop and made breakfast, smiling when he came downstairs. Blake was training for a bodybuilding competition in 3 months. It consumed his life, meal prep, workouts, photo shoots. His social media following was growing, brands were reaching out, and his ego expanded with every like and comment. I'd always supported him, managing his schedule, editing his posts, helping with content ideas. He took it all for granted, never acknowledging my contributions. "You're so helpful, babe," he'd say dismissively, like I was his assistant instead of his fiancé. I kept playing that role, but now with purpose. I had access to everything, his accounts, his passwords, his plans. Blake trusted me because he underestimated me. He saw a plain girl lucky to have him, not someone intelligent enough to see through his facade. I began documenting everything, every lie, every secret meeting, every nasty comment he made about me to Clarissa. I was building something, though I didn't know exactly what yet. Just gathering ammunition. I finally met Clarissa by accident, or so Blake thought. I tracked her Instagram through Blake's messages and accidentally showed up at the same cafe she frequented. She was beautiful in an obvious way, blonde, fit, perfectly made up. Everything I wasn't. When she sat at the table next to mine, I struck up a conversation. "I love your bracelet," I said, friendly and genuine. She smiled, and we chatted about nothing important. She had no idea who I was. Why would she? Blake kept me off his social media, claiming he wanted to protect our privacy. Really, he wanted to keep his options open. Clarissa mentioned she was seeing someone amazing, a fitness influencer. "He's incredible, so dedicated to his craft." My smile never wavered. "That's wonderful. You're so lucky." She agreed enthusiastically. We exchanged phone numbers, and she suggested we grab coffee again. "I don't have many female friends," she admitted. Neither did I. This would be interesting. Becoming Clarissa's friend was easier than expected. She was lonely, despite her appearance. Her life revolved around Blake's schedule, waiting for him to text, analyzing every interaction. She thought she'd won some prize, stealing him away from his boring fiancé. I listened to her talk about Blake for hours, nodding sympathetically. "He says his fiancé doesn't understand him," Clarissa confided over coffee. That they're basically roommates. He's only with her out of obligation. I bit my tongue, maintaining my sympathetic expression. That sounds difficult for everyone involved. Inside, I was cataloging every word. Clarissa didn't know I was the fiancé she was discussing. She thought I was Emma, a graphic designer she'd met randomly. The irony was delicious. Meanwhile, Blake continued his double life, growing more careless. He'd leave his phone unlocked, forget to delete messages. His arrogance made him sloppy. He truly believed I was too simple to suspect anything. That assumption would cost him everything. Blake's competition was 8 weeks away. He'd hired a coach, a photographer, and was courting sponsorship deals. His entire future depended on winning this competition or at least placing high enough to boost his influencer career. He talked about it constantly, envisioning the money, the fame, the opportunities. I helped him prepare, meal prepping his specialized diet, scheduling his posts, researching competitors. He barely thanked me, too focused on his reflection and his phone. One evening, while Blake showered, Clarissa texted him. I watched the message appear on his laptop, can't wait for tomorrow night. I got the lingerie you wanted. Tomorrow night, Blake had told me he had a late training session. My chest tightened with rage, but I stayed calm. This was information, not emotion. I took a screenshot and added it to my growing collection. Then I texted Clarissa from my Emma's phone, coffee tomorrow afternoon? She agreed immediately. I was spinning multiple threads now, weaving them into something bigger. At coffee, Clarissa was glowing. I saw him last night, she whispered excitedly. It was perfect. He's amazing, Emma. I think I'm falling in love. I sipped my tea, maintaining my concerned friend expression. Does he talk about leaving his fiancée? Clarissa's smile faltered slightly. He says soon. After his competition. He doesn't want drama affecting his performance. How convenient. I nodded understandingly. That makes sense. But you deserve someone who chooses you fully, not someone who keeps you hidden. Seeds of doubt, nothing more. Clarissa defended him, but I saw the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Good. Meanwhile, I'd started my own project. I was a writer, after all. I'd been blogging anonymously for years, building a small but loyal following. My blog focused on relationships, toxic behavior, red flags. I'd never shared personal stories before, keeping everything general. That was about to change. I began writing our story, Blake's and mine, disguised just enough to maintain deniability but detailed enough to be compelling. My blog post was titled, The Narcissist's Playbook, a real-life case study. I detailed everything, the subtle criticisms, the gaslighting, the emotional manipulation, the cheating. I didn't use names, but anyone who knew Blake would recognize the patterns. I described his social media obsession, his superficiality, his treatment of his supportive partner. The post was raw, honest, and devastating. I published it late at night while Blake slept beside me, oblivious. By morning, it had 3,000 shares. By afternoon, 10,000. People related to it, shared their own stories, thanked me for putting words to their experiences. The comments section became a support group. Blake woke up, checked his phone, and complained about his engagement rates being down. The algorithms against me, he muttered. He had no idea a storm was building. I smiled and brought him his protein shake. I'm sure it'll pick up. He didn't even thank me, just scrolled through his phone, probably texting Clarissa. Blake's coach wanted to do a couples shoot. It'll humanize you, he explained. Show you're not just a gym bro, but a devoted partner. Blake hesitated, clearly not wanting me in his carefully curated feed. But his coach insisted, claiming it would boost engagement. So Blake agreed, grudgingly. The shoot was torture. The photographer kept asking us to look in love, to touch naturally, to smile like we meant it. Blake's discomfort was obvious, his smile forced. I played my part perfectly, the adoring fiancé, proud of her man's dedication. The photos turned out well, me gazing at him with manufactured devotion. Blake posted one with the caption, "Couldn't do this without my rock." The comments flooded in with hearts and support. Clarissa saw it. She texted my Emma a number. He posted his fiancée, "I feel sick." I met her that evening. She was crying, mascara running. He said they were basically over. Why would he post that? I held her hand, comforting. Men lie, Clarissa. Especially ones obsessed with their image. Clarissa wanted to confront Blake. I talked her down, gently. If you confront him, he'll just gaslight you. Make you feel crazy. You need evidence, proof you can't deny. She looked at me with desperate eyes. How? I pretended to think. Well, if he's lying to you, he's probably lying to her too. Maybe you should find out what he's really saying about both of you. I planted the idea carefully. Within days, Clarissa had created a fake Instagram account and was messaging Blake's followers, gathering information. She discovered he'd been flirting with multiple women, keeping options open, playing various angles. Her devastation was real, and I felt a twinge of guilt. But she'd knowingly pursued an engaged man. My sympathy had limits. Meanwhile, my blog following was exploding. The narcissist post had gone viral, shared across platforms. Strangers messaged me their stories. Some sounded eerily similar to mine. I began writing follow-up posts, each one documenting different aspects of Blake's behavior without naming him. Yet, Blake's competition was 4 weeks away. His stress levels were high, making him even more irritable. He snapped at me constantly, criticized everything, then apologized with empty words. "Sorry, babe, it's just the diet. I'm hangry." Hangry was his excuse for being cruel. I accepted his apologies silently, counting down. Clarissa had gone quiet, processing Blake's betrayals. I'd see her at the cafe sometimes, looking lost. She'd stopped defending him to me, started questioning everything. How could I have been so stupid, she'd ask. I knew he was engaged, but I believed his lies about their relationship being over. I wanted to tell her who I really was, watch her face realize the woman she'd confided in was the very fiancé she'd helped betray. But timing mattered. Everything had to align perfectly. Instead, I introduced another element. Through my blog's growing platform, I'd connected with other women Blake had messaged, strung along, discarded. There were 7 of them. 7 women who'd believed his lies. I created a private group chat for Blake's victims. None of them knew about the others. When they compared stories, patterns emerged. Blake used the same lines on everyone. "My girlfriend doesn't understand me. You're so different from other girls. I'm planning to end things with her." He'd sent identical compliments, made similar promises, pursued them all simultaneously. The women were shocked, angry, and hungry for justice. I moderated the conversation carefully, guiding them toward constructive action rather than chaos. Going after him individually won't work, I explained. He'll deny, manipulate, play victim. We need coordinated exposure. They agreed. We began planning, each woman contributing evidence, screenshots, voice messages, photos. Blake had been careless with all of them, his arrogance making him sloppy. He never imagined these women would compare notes, unite against him. That was his fatal mistake. Men like Blake operated through isolation, keeping victims separate. Together, we were powerful. 3 weeks before the competition, Blake's sponsor, a supplement company, announced him as their newest brand ambassador. It was his big break, the opportunity he'd been chasing. The contract included appearances, social media requirements, and a modest but meaningful paycheck. Blake was ecstatic, celebrating with an expensive dinner he charged to our joint credit card. "This is it, Sophia. My career's taking off." He kissed me, actually seeming present for once. I smiled and congratulated him, knowing this contract would make the fall even more devastating. His entire identity was wrapped up in this fitness influencer persona. Everything depended on maintaining his image, devoted, disciplined, inspirational. Any scandal could destroy it. I checked the sponsor's social media policy. They had strict morality clauses about brand ambassadors' behavior. Public scandals, evidence of dishonesty, character issues, all grounds for immediate termination. Perfect. Blake posted about the sponsorship constantly, thanking his supporters, his coach, and my amazing fiancé. The comments praised him. Nobody knew what was coming. Clarissa reached out, wanting to meet. She looked different, harder, angrier. I'm done being his secret, she announced. I'm going to expose him. I'd been waiting for this. How? She had a plan, commenting on his posts, messaging his followers, telling everyone the truth. It was impulsive, emotional, and would backfire. Blake would deny it, she'd look like a bitter side piece, and nothing would change. I needed to redirect her. That might not work the way you want, I said gently. He has a huge platform. He'll control the narrative, make you look crazy. Her face fell. Then what do I do? I leaned forward. What if I told you there's a way to expose him that he can't deny? Where his own words condemn him. I explained my plan carefully, watching her face shift from despair to hope to fierce determination. I'm in, she said immediately. Whatever it takes. I smiled. The pieces were falling into place. 2 weeks before the competition, I made a decision. Blake was doing an interview with a fitness podcast, discussing his journey, his dedication, his values. He'd prepared talking points about discipline, integrity, and the importance of having a strong support system. I listened to him practice, spouting lies with practiced sincerity. The night before the interview, I moved out. Not dramatically, just efficiently. While Blake was at the gym, I packed my essentials and left. I didn't take much, just clothes, documents, and my laptop. Everything else could stay. I left a note, I know about Clarissa. And the others. Don't contact me. Simple, direct, devastating. When Blake found it, he called 17 times. I didn't answer. He texted, ranging from apologetic to angry to manipulative. Let me explain. You're overreacting. Please, we can fix this. I blocked him everywhere. His podcast interview the next day was a disaster. He was distracted, defensive, kept checking his phone. The host noticed, asked if everything was okay. Just some personal stuff, Blake mumbled, destroying his polished image in real time. Blake's panic was immediate and public. He posted on Instagram, going through a difficult time. Please respect my privacy. His followers flooded the comments with support, speculating about what happened. Some guessed relationship troubles. Others assumed family issues. Nobody knew the truth yet. Meanwhile, I'd moved into a friend's spare room and was putting final touches on my masterpiece. My blog now had 50,000 followers, all invested in the narcissist story I'd been telling. They'd watch this anonymous tale unfold, relating to every detail, cheering for the unnamed protagonist to escape. It was time to reveal the truth. I wrote the final post, "The narcissist has a name." In it, I identified Blake, not explicitly at first, but through details his followers would recognize. The fitness competition, the supplement sponsorship, the specific lies. I included screenshots of his messages to multiple women, voice recordings where he badmouthed me, evidence of his systematic deception. Then I tagged him. The post went viral within hours. Blake's followers found it, read it, and started connecting dots. Comments flooded his Instagram. Is this about you? Did you really do this? We trusted you. Blake tried to deny everything, posting a long statement claiming he was being falsely accused by a bitter ex. But I'd prepared for this. The 7 women from my group chat went public simultaneously, each posting their own experiences with Blake, their evidence, their stories. The coordination was perfect. Blake couldn't fight 7 different fronts. He tried responding, but each denial was met with more evidence. Screenshots, voice messages, photos, proof he couldn't dispute. Clarissa posted too, revealing her side of the affair, expressing remorse for participating but anger at his manipulation. He told me she knew that they had an arrangement, she wrote. I was wrong to believe him, but his lies were convincing. The internet loves a villain, and Blake had become one overnight. Blake's sponsor dropped him within 24 hours. They released a statement, "We value integrity and honesty. Blake's behavior doesn't align with our brand values." Other partnerships fell apart rapidly. A protein powder company cancelled his ambassadorship. A gym chain removed his promotional materials. His carefully built empire crumbled in real time. His follower count plummeted as people unfollowed in droves. The comments on his posts were brutal, calling him a fraud, a liar, a narcissist. Some defended him, but they were shouted down by the majority. Blake's response was to double down, claiming he was the victim of a coordinated attack by jealous haters. This only made things worse. He looked defensive, guilty, pathetic. His competition was 10 days away, and he was falling apart. His coach quit, stating publicly that he couldn't work with someone who lied to everyone. Blake was isolated, exposed, watching everything he'd built collapse because his arrogance had blinded him to the possibility of consequences. I didn't celebrate Blake's downfall publicly. That wasn't the point. Instead, I focused on my blog's growth and the community that had formed around it. Thousands of people shared their stories of narcissistic partners, toxic relationships, gaslighting. My blog became a resource, a safe space, a platform for voices that had been silenced. I started a podcast, interviewing relationship experts, therapists, survivors. It grew quickly, filling a need people didn't know they had. Meanwhile, Blake spiraled. He posted increasingly desperate content, workout videos nobody watched, motivational quotes that rang hollow, pleas for understanding. His engagement rates were abysmal. The algorithm had abandoned him just like his followers. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd moved back in with his parents, devastated and broke. His competition performance was terrible, he placed last, looking defeated before he even stepped on stage. Photos from the event showed a broken man, nothing like the confident influencer he'd pretended to be. Clarissa reached out months later. She'd been through therapy, worked on herself, and wanted to apologize properly. We met at the same cafe where we'd first talked. I knew you were Emma, she admitted. I figured it out eventually. The timeline, the details you knew. I'm so sorry, Sophia. I accepted her apology. You were manipulated too. Blake's good at that. She nodded. I read your blog. Everything you wrote about narcissistic behavior, I saw it but chose to ignore it. I wanted to be special, chosen. I didn't care who I hurt. Her honesty was refreshing. We all make mistakes, I said. What matters is learning from them. She asked what I planned to do next. I told her about my podcast, my writing, the community I was building. I turned the worst experience of my life into something meaningful. That's the best revenge, thriving when they thought they'd broken you. Clarissa smiled. You're incredible. He never deserved you. I agreed. Blake had never deserved me. A year after Blake's exposure, my life was unrecognizable. My blog had morphed into a full website with resources, articles, and a thriving community. The podcast had sponsors, regular listeners, and featured prominent guests. I'd been approached about writing a book, turning my experiences into a guide for recognizing and escaping toxic relationships. Everything I'd built came from pain, yes, but also from strength I didn't know I had. Blake had tried to make me small, insignificant, grateful for his attention. Instead, his betrayal had pushed me to discover my voice and my worth. I'd rebuilt my entire life on my own terms. Meanwhile, Blake had faded into obscurity. His social media was essentially dead, his influencer dreams destroyed. I heard he was working at a regular gym, teaching classes, trying to rebuild. Some people deserved second chances. I didn't care if Blake was one of them. He was no longer my concern. I'd moved on completely, emotionally and physically. New city, new apartment, new life. I started dating again, cautiously. The trauma Blake inflicted had left scars, making trust difficult. But I was determined not to let his toxicity poison my future. I met someone named Oliver through mutual friends. He was kind, genuine, emotionally intelligent, everything Blake wasn't. Our first date, I was nervous, waiting for red flags. Oliver noticed. "You okay? We can slow down if this is too much." His consideration was startling. I explained briefly about my past relationship, the betrayal. Oliver listened without interruption, then said, "I'm sorry you went through that. Take whatever time you need. I'm not going anywhere." We took things slow. Oliver followed my blog, knew my story, respected my boundaries. He encouraged my work, celebrated my successes, and never made me feel small. Dating him showed me what healthy love looked like. Blake had been a masterclass in what to avoid. Oliver was teaching me what to embrace. The contrast was profound and healing. What nobody knew, not Blake, not even the women in my group chat, was that I'd been working with a documentary filmmaker for 6 months. She'd reached out after my story went viral, interested in exploring toxic relationships and digital narcissism. We'd interviewed dozens of Blake's victims, gathered evidence, and created a comprehensive look at how manipulators operate in the social media age. The documentary wasn't just about Blake. It was about the culture that enabled him, the systems that protected men like him, the patterns that repeated across countless relationships. Blake was the case study, but the message was universal. We'd secretly filmed interviews with relationship experts, psychologists, social media analysts. We'd tracked Blake's patterns back years, finding previous girlfriends he'd mistreated, girls from college he'd manipulated, a trail of damage he'd left behind. The documentary was titled, Behind the Filter, The Real Cost of Fake Perfection. It premiered at a film festival in the fall, winning awards and generating massive buzz. Blake had no idea it existed until it was announced. The documentary's release destroyed what little remained of Blake's reputation. It wasn't vindictive or cruel, it was simply truthful. His own words, his own actions, his own patterns laid bare for everyone to see. The film showed text messages, voice recordings, interviews with his victims. It showed how he'd systematically targeted insecure women, manipulated them, discarded them, and moved on without remorse. But more importantly, it showed the bigger picture. How social media enables narcissistic behavior. How image becomes more important than integrity. How followers and likes can inflate someone's ego to dangerous levels. Blake was the example, but the lesson applied to countless others. The documentary went viral, streaming platforms bidding for rights. It became a cultural moment, sparking conversations about toxic masculinity, digital ethics, and relationship red flags. Blake tried to sue for defamation. His lawyer reviewed the evidence and dropped him as a client. Everything in the documentary was true, documented, and protected by free speech. Blake couldn't hide behind lies anymore. The truth was public record now, permanent and unchangeable. 2 years after finding that hotel receipt, I transformed completely. My book became a bestseller. My podcast was downloaded millions of times. The documentary won an Emmy. But more than professional success, I'd found peace. Blake's betrayal, which had felt devastating in the moment, had actually freed me. It forced me to see him clearly, to recognize my own strength, to build something meaningful from pain. The greatest revenge wasn't his public humiliation, though that was satisfying. It was my success, my happiness, my growth. Blake had tried to make me feel worthless. Instead, he'd revealed my worth to the world and to myself. I married Oliver in a small ceremony surrounded by real friends, people who loved and supported me genuinely. As I stood there, promising forever to someone who actually deserved it, I thought briefly about Blake. Not with anger or bitterness, but with gratitude. He'd taught me what love wasn't, which helped me recognize what love was. Blake's downfall made headlines, but my rise was the real story. He'd rubbed his cheating in my face, arrogant and careless. He never noticed I was documenting everything, building my revenge with patience and precision. By the time he realized what was happening, it was too late. The narrative was written, and I held the pen. His legacy would be cautionary. Mine would be empowering. That distinction made all the difference. I'd turned his cruelty into my catalyst, his betrayal into my breakthrough. And in doing so, I'd proven that the best revenge isn't destroying someone else, it's building yourself into something they could never diminish again.